pre-recorded live and broadcasting from their undisclosed location in the Bremerton suburbs. Sam Kramer.
What was great about me was
Mark Boutte.
To the internet.
Two geeks on a quest to hear themselves talk as often as possible. This is the Gaming Disquisition.
The Gaming Disquisition with Sam and Mark for Sunday, July 7th, 2013.
Wow. It's been a while.
And show number 55 is go. I'm Sam.
I am Mark.
This is the Disquisition.
Sunday at the undisclosed location of the Bremerton suburbs. It's the Gaming Disquisition with Sam and Mark. We're going to sell you the whole sea, but you'll only need the edge.
Oh, man. It feels like it's been since 2012, though. How you doing, Mark?
It's only been a few weeks.
I know, but it's just I'm totally out of practice for everything, including writing my notes, evidently.
And talking.
No,
it's been a hectic couple of weeks, so it's understandable.
It has been. Well, how hectic were they?
Well, I moved. I've got a new job. Let's see. Oh yeah, we're doing the podcast in a different side of your house now.
I know, it's amazing. We actually, I'm not even sure what the acoustics are going to do to this room, but I think
I already missed the Mega Man poster.
We can put it back up. It's
over there.
It's down there. I just haven't gotten around to it. There's boxes everywhere, and they need tending.
That being the case at my place too. Lots of boxes everywhere, and of course, it's like, oh, we got the TV in? Cool. And the game systems? Cool. They're hooked up before our couch is even put together.
Of course.
Because, priorities.
Well, it let you my old cable modem said that you didn't have to wait for Comcast to show up with theirs.
I was going to say 3 days without internet probably would have killed me somehow. So I did have to get all that, and I'm still borrowing a router. So I'm going to go out and get myself a nice faster router because 2 megabits download speed on my desktop
Woo!
is that's screaming fast, y'all. But,
speaking of which, I figured out how to fix the problem I was having with my upstream.
That's good. Did you consult your physician?
I did.
We were all worried about your upstream, but we weren't going to say anything because it's kind of rude.
He told me to stop stuffing turnips in my outbox. Anyway, so I was having some trouble streaming to Twitch TV, and it took me a while to figure out what it was because for the longest time I thought it was the internet connection at the house. And turns out it wasn't because I had someone come out here and he did some things and it kind of worked, it kind of didn't. The problem that the Comcast dude had though when he came out here was that we only tested it on one computer.
I see.
So when the second guy came out and everything was fine on his, and after he left I tested that on mine, I'm like, oh boy.
I see.
This could be anything.
By the way, that's Comcast, everyone. www.xfinity.com, 1-800-GO-XFINITY.
The future of awesome.
There's some free advertising for it.
I know, right? So what happened was I was really worried about what I had to do here because maybe I had a virus, maybe I've got
oh yeah, it's probably a virus.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Problems like the Venn diagram of problems that people say are caused by viruses,
yes,
and the problems are actually caused by viruses with no intersection at all.
Exactly. That's immediately we popped into my head.
I know. But it could be that my one of the sockets of the router is bad, or
probably
maybe the cable was bad.
You crossed the streams.
Maybe the thing on the port on the back of the motherboard was bad. Maybe it was hardware. Maybe it was software.
Oh yeah.
Who knows? Well, turns out absolutely was software because I ended up I did a safe boot. Found out that that I had no problems. Mm-hmm. And so I just took a look at all my running applications and tried to figure out what they were.
I kind of do that on a weekly basis. I go through msconfig and I do a bunch of stuff just to make sure nothing's attached itself to my system, nothing's running in the background I don't need.
Well, so what I found out was this thing that was running was part of the Asus software suite.
Uh-huh.
And it was something like network eye control or something to optimize my my network and everything.
Of course, yeah.
And so lesson learned: never buy a motherboard for its software solutions.
No,
because that's not what they're for.
No, not at all.
So I got rid of that, and it's working like a dream now. So I can do streaming to Twitch TV. I even put up a little Twitch thing on how to site with the CZ550 in DayZ.
Oh, neat!
It was kind of neat. And then I read later on that a method already exists, but I made one, so I thought I would post it.
That'll be relevant until DayZ Standalone comes out.
I think they're probably going to keep a lot of that kind of stuff relevant because it's all based on like realistic stuff. You know, like
it depends on the engine and how in depth they decide to go with it, and how they might change up the entirety of it, and you might have to come up with a new reason or a new way to do it.
Maybe
just because they're basing it on realism doesn't necessarily mean they're going to use the same realism across two different game engines.
Yes, but like, I mean, these guns actually exist. That's the thing.
Yes, but I guess the idea is that if one game engine is going to handle it differently, and then the other one, their physics might be just a little different, so you're going to have to record in a completely different aiming solution.
I get the feeling that if the physics were slightly different in DayZ, the developers would consider it to be wrong.
Yeah,
you know. Anyway, so I did a little bit of that this week. I picked up a new game, and I really kind of whimsically because, you know, like those Steam sales.
Because you're full of whimsy.
That's how
I would describe you.
So I picked up a game called La Mulana, and it's an indie game. It's a game that got greenlit, and I was reading some descriptions about it. And it was talking about how like Castlevania meets Dark Souls or something like that. And like, I guess some warning bell should have gone off in my head because
when their bullet points are other games, you generally have an issue.
Well, that, and I consider Dark Souls to be Castlevania. But then again, if you think about it, like Castlevania as a series hasn't been like Dark Souls in like, you know, probably decades.
Right. Yeah.
So I picked up this game just to see, because like, and I feel bad because like the Dark Souls sold me on it, and it shouldn't have. Right. Because as it turns out, this game is nothing like Dark Souls.
Of course not.
But the reason why they say it's like Dark Souls is because it's, you know, quote unquote hard.
It's a difficult game. It must be like Dark Souls.
I know, without any sort of consideration as to what makes Dark Souls actually difficult or how the gameplay works at all.
Yeah, I was going to say those warning bells. You should have listened to those.
I should have, but you know, I am on the Gaming Disquisition, and maybe I should like venture out of my comfort zone and like cover games that maybe other people would enjoy.
I suppose.
But the thing is, no one's allowed to enjoy this game because the reason why is because this game is like, remember the sequelitis video on Castlevania 1 versus Castlevania 2?
Yeah.
This game is the quintessential Castlevania 2.
Oh dear.
Like in every single capacity. And the reason why is because it's basically a whole bunch of it's this big explorer all the places and like this big sprawling world. It's like, you know how basically Castlevania 2 was kind of a precursor to the Metroidvania whole genre, just kind of done really badly.
Right.
And I feel like some of those same things that are done badly are the case here. One of the things that, like, probably one of the stupidest things about the whole game is the setting of the game is like this Indiana Jones kind of explore the temple kind of thing. Right. So, of course, in order to facilitate that, we need to, like, you know, put weights onto pedestals. Right. They made a whole system out of it. So, like, but it's like a system. It's not really a system. Basically what it is you collect weights, and then there are pedestals, and you put them on pedestals, and they open up, like, they're basically like triggers or whatever. The thing is, it's not like something that, like, you put the weight down and it holds it open and then you can pick the weight back up. No, like, it consumes the weight. Oh. So it's like a key in Legend of Zelda in a way. Right. Except you need to keep collecting these things because, like, it's silly that way, actually, because, like, you come up on this door and it has a pedestal, like, immediately in front of it, and you need to put a weight on it. And, like, the way you get weights is you grind for them. You know, there are creatures that drop them.
I was actually really worried you were going to say that.
That's exactly what it is.
That's ridiculous.
And it's just like, you know, like, why have do I have to earn the right to go through this door that I have found by virtue of grinding? Yeah. And, like, and it's such a pointless system, but it's worse than pointless because it could be detrimental. It could be harmful to the game, and it ended up being harmful to the game. Right. And because and I discovered it very, very early on, where I put a weight on a door and I opened the door and went into a new area. Huh. And so now I'm in this area, and because it's a Metroidvania game, you're like, oh, I don't have the arbitrary item that I need to go forward. Yeah. So now I'm going to go back, and I'd put some more weights down to, you know, clear the area. So now I go back, and now the door is shut again for no reason.
And now you're going to go grind all those weights again?
Here's the problem. I had no weights, and on the opposite end of the door where I was, it was impossible to acquire weights. Oh, I guess I start the whole game over because I didn't have the foresight to like bring 30 weights with me.
That sounds like a game-breaking bug right there.
It really is. And like I don't know if this is intentional or not. Like if it's intentional, it's almost worse than if it were accidental. Because it's like, well, you're gonna make me start over a game that might take 40 hours because like I happen to run out of weights, and now I'm paranoid, and now I'm just like, now I carry like 50 weights everywhere I go, and if I fall below 50 weights, I get worried. It's dumb.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just like, it's based off of finding all these items, and it's just the same game we've played before. Like there's all the puzzles in the games are like the cryptic clues or whatever that you have to like decipher, like, it's the, put the thing on the heavens and the stone and
right.
and it's just, these aren't real puzzles. You're just being obtuse.
Yeah.
And then there are actual traps. Like there's another area in the game where like you put down a weight and 2 walls come down on either side of you and you're trapped. Hope you saved recently.
Oh, jeez.
It's like, what is this?
Well, it's because it's like Dark Souls.
Oh, yeah, because Dark Souls...
Yeah, except for the fact that Dark Souls, when it punishes you by something that, you actually can see coming, or that you really should have been paying attention to, rather than just arbitrarily, screwing you over.
Yeah, it's really, really silly.
Yeah. And I feel bad for you that you went and purchased that game, then.
And it's like...
That's what you get for being whimsical.
It's what I get for getting a Steam greenlit game, because,
No. Black Mesa was worth it. That was awesome that it got greenlit, and
the thing is that's not even a real game. Like that's just like a reskin. They didn't design that. Like I've kind of thought this for a while that like I complain a lot about AAA titles. But like indie titles are almost worse in a way because like because they're indie, they feel the need to like break all these rules because well that's what we do is why are these rules here? Well, maybe the rules are there for a reason, and you can't just break rules arbitrarily to see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Funny enough, actually, it kind of segues well into what I've been playing like, in my off time. Remember, I talked the last time we were here. I was playing the Dungeon Village.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned there's another game called Game Dev Story.
Yes.
I actually started playing that.
Okay.
And I'm at odds, really.
Oh?
It's interesting and it's kind of fun, but there's a problem with it. There's a very inherent problem because, when you start the game, you have like your lead guy, you have a programmer, a sound person, and like a graphic designer. That's what you have in your office. Mm-hmm. And like they kind of say, well, go ahead and start making a game. And they give you a bunch of options, like, do you want to make an action game? Do you want to make an adventure game? Do you want to make a, this type of,
Do you want to action game, like we were in the NES era?
Yes, exactly, actually. Because you start out and, like, PC and, like, an Atari box are, like, the only things available to make games for.
I see.
And, like, PC is, like, ridiculously cheap to make games for, but the other one you have to buy a license to start making games for. Well, the unfortunate thing is, like, you make your game, like, you choose your genre... or you choose your game style, like action, adventure, puzzle, whatever, and then you choose a genre like samurai or robots or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And
choose theming elements.
Exactly. So you have your theme and you have your style, and then you like can move these sliders around a bit and be like, oh well, I want to have more polish and I want to have less cuteness, more realism, and okay, we're right over.
I think I recall this.
Yeah, and you make it and like. Okay, you do all this stuff, and you spend all this time, and you waste all this money, and you do the marketing, and everything's like, and then like, okay, the reviews are coming in, and it's like, terrible. For no discernible reason.
Yeah.
The game gives you no feedback onto what would actually be good, or what could actually be like there's no like list of these games are really hot right now, so you can make a game kind of like it and ride their success or anything like that. Now keep in mind, I'm playing the tablet version, not the full version that's available on Steam, which actually has better graphics, more content, more stuff to do.
Yeah. Dan was talking about, because he plays this game, and like he was saying a lot of the same stuff, that the game just does not convey to you what you're supposed to do at all.
Yeah, Total Biscuit did a review that I watched on it, because after I bought it and played it for a little while, I'm like, I wonder if other people are having the same issue. And yet, sure enough, his major complaint was, I have no idea what makes a good game. This game doesn't tell me what makes a good game. I made like, what was it? I made a historical samurai action game.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, and I made it for a console that had a really large, really good market share and all this other stuff, and it was decent. Like, it was like a 7 out of 10. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then I made one the exact same way for like the handheld, and it was like amazing, like 9 out of 10, like the same exact thing on a different console sold amazingly well. I'm like, I don't understand why that was.
I mean, like, so to be fair, I will say this, that like, you know, in keeping with my whole like, you know, video games as art and like communicating ideas and whatnot, like, you know, maybe the point of this game wasn't to be really like, you know, a complex and depth and satisfying thing to solve. Maybe it was kind of a like a tongue-in-cheek kind of poking fun at the like, you know, oh, these AAA devs, they really don't know what they're doing, and their success really is kind of random.
And part of me actually thought about that. It's like, you know, when the only reason I kept playing after this fact, because I got mildly frustrated at it, and I'm like, well, I don't want to look for a guide. I don't want to do anything like that. I'm not here to min-max this game. You know, I started playing and I'm like, well, maybe if I just try to make whatever I think would be fun, then other people might like it. And it was completely hit or miss on how it was going to be. I'm going to make a robot puzzle game. Oh, wow, it went really, really well somehow.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing is it's somewhat fast-paced. Unless you know what you're doing, like 4 consoles will come out by the time you've made like 2 games. And it's like, what?
That sounds about right, though. I mean, in some cases, people just like did not have their stuff together to make their games.
Exactly. I mean, the game just left me sitting there wondering, what am I doing?
Well, this is the Gaming Disquisition, where we go head-to-head on topics important to everybody.
Gaming culture.
We tell it like it is.
Completely subjectively.
And it all ends up with us saving the world.
Like we've been doing since we first picked up a touchscreen.
A touchscreen? How many worlds have you been saving with touchscreens exactly?
None.
Really, you haven't been like you've been basically sinking like the game development studios and just like, you know, having them, you know, oh, you know what? I even have a sounder for this. It's the thing with
Bring out.
Yes,
that's pretty much the fate of every single game developer studio you've probably played on that game.
Yeah, sounds about right. Although I just as a little brief thing, I might get the Steam version just to see what other options are, because I feel really limited on the tablet version.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
But that said, we need to move right along.
Put down that touch screen and pick up
the mailbag. All right, then. So if you'd like to get a hold of us in our TwitFace Mail Plus, you can get a hold of us in the email at gamingdisquisition@gmail.com.
You can reach us on Facebook, facebook.com/thegamingdisquisition, or on the Google+.
Get a hold of us on Twitter at DisquisitorSam.
At DisquisitorMark.
On Twitter.
Tweet.
I will take this opportunity to say that it being basically 2-week hiatus, I definitely do apologize to all you listeners for going so long without your your weekly disquisition.
I ain't doing this every day.
Understand that I wouldn't have made the call if I didn't think it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Needless to say, we are back and we are theoretically better than ever. So thank you very much for sticking with us during this troubled time.
Whoa. What do you mean theoretically? We are better than ever. Every single week we are better than ever.
It's true. So, moving right along to the mail. Sam in the Facebook, a different Sam than the one that you know. He links us a video from GDC 2013 featuring David Gator, who was the lead writer for Dragon Age. We are going to cover that. I mentioned that we were that was going to hit the show, but we are going to put that off for next week. I want to get some help with that from a friend of mine, and so we're going to try to get an interview going on with that, and we will be doing. We'll be doing a special guest thing as we are wont to do.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, thank you for linking that to us.
Mm-hmm. And but hold on.
Hold on. What? Yes.
Mailbag's kind of.
We have a few things like last week's Inquisition, which went a little something like this. Like this.
You didn't actually put it there.
You should remember, even though it was 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, we did a show.
Solve the worldwide internet problem with crazy.
Oh, yes, that's what we did.
The worldwide internet connectivity problem with crazy.
To which Paul actually responded on Facebook. Says, assuming you've solved the human genome, you could base the IP addresses off the person's unique DNA.
This is something, obviously, tacking onto your solution.
Which I still wholeheartedly support.
Honestly, I feel like we should just do that regardless. There's
some great metadata you can get out of that. Especially because all of our food is going to have, tiny nanomachines in it anyway, so we're going to know exactly who's eating what, how much of it they're eating, when they're eating it, and,
But people already know that,
But we're going to know, onto, a microscopic level. They consumed 4.67283 liters of Diet Coke.
Pretty sure the NSA already knows that you do that.
Yeah, well.
I'm just saying. All right, so, that's it for last week's Inquisition.
Yeah, we took a couple weeks off, and apparently everyone else did too.
It's true. So, we're going to move right along then.
Dug it done.
To this week's Inquisition. So, this week, there's an article on Destructoid.com that has to do with a new game by Zynga. It's a game by the name of Coasterville. And
so... Blankville.
I
just
know.
Fill in the blank.
Yeah, I mean that's just that. It's pretty much like they're just formulaic. We already know what their modus operandi is. Don't innovate, just copy what everyone else is doing, and make all the money ever.
I have no idea what anything about this game except for the name, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's like a roller coaster tycoon game, like Farmville.
Honestly, I was thinking it was like a mill where they make coasters for your drinks.
Oh, wow.
See,
that's really bringing it to a whole other level.
I think that would be very compelling.
Or maybe just a bunch of people who are put their cars into neutral when going down hills.
Wow. Okay. So there's this game, and evidently there's separate. They don't have one big customer support for all the games combined. They like to separate that out. Well, when they separated it out for Coasterville, they said, you know what, you can email any kind of customer support things you need to an email ending in @themepark.com.
Mm-hmm. They made a mistake, though.
Problem is, they don't own that. A guy by the name of Eric Mueller does.
Yeah, this is a recipe for hilarity.
So Mueller got a hold of Zynga as he started because he starts getting all these customer support tickets, right? And he emails Zynga saying, "Hey, I've got these emails, and you might want to know about it." And Zynga kind of didn't want to know about it.
They didn't respond to him. I guess they might have thought it was a hoax or something, but realistically, I mean, if the guy, calls him up or emails and says, "Hey, I think you guys have messed up. I'm getting all your customer support calls." Unless they really look into it, they're probably never going to believe him. So he did what any other red-blooded American would do. He just started answering questions as ridiculously as possible.
For example, here's a solution to a problem. Lay a hockey jersey across your keyboard.
Yeah, make sure to spam all your Facebook friends with the phrase, "I love brown bears, folding chairs, and little curly hairs."
And while you're doing it, make sure you click really slowly.
See, I think that's just the greatest thing ever. I mean, it's like walking into a department store and answering the phone as rudely as possible.
Absolutely. It's like anybody who's ever worked for phone support for people, if you've ever wanted to just just give off some kind of random kind of just crazy solution that they'll believe because they're dumb. Mm-hmm. This is exactly what he did.
Yeah, I mean, it actually kind of, it reminded me of a situation, not my Inquisition answer, but it definitely reminded me, when I used to have people call my house for pizza. The number for our house was one number away from the pizza place.
Oh, really?
And people would just call and start ordering. It was a good couple months of this, and eventually we're just yeah, all right, it'll be on its way.
I see.
Don't you need my card? Nah, man, pizza's on us. Click. Stuff like that. But this is just ridiculous, though, because eventually Zynga did actually get a hold of him and go, "Oh, wait, whoops." But
yeah, and I mean, to be fair, they could have, if they had been paying any attention at all, they could have had a stop to this from the very beginning. So kudos to you, Mr. Mueller, for giving us a little bit of daily dose of hilarity.
Yeah, I love that. Just make sure you put a hockey jersey over your keyboard.
But advice is one of those things that when people they have some kind of a problem, maybe with their computer or maybe with their game, maybe they're stuck in a game, maybe they need a little bit of help formulating a D&D character or something like that. A lot of people are looking for advice about what it is that you got to do. And sometimes we give it to them, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you actually saw this. Did you actually read one of the responses he gave?
I didn't.
No. For example, someone asked, that had a problem. He says, I know for Canada Day, the engineering department wraps the CA servers in Canadian flags and then sets a plate of poutine on top. That sometimes can cause the server to overheat and sometimes even get gravy into the login logout module. I thought that might be what's going on, but I checked with the Canadian server techs and they're telling me that Canada Day passed without incident and the servers all enjoyed their break and are back to running fine. However, I told them that wasn't the case and explained the problems you were having with the game, so they suggested another fix specifically for Canadian players. Here's what they said to try. Do you have a hockey jersey? If so, you should lay it across your keyboard and then try to enter the game. If that doesn't work, put the jersey on and then give it another shot.
Fantastic.
Oh, try the slow clicks. Oh, man.
And just the fact that it's so well worded and everything. It's just like very, very official.
Can you tell me if you're on a Mac or Windows, and would you say you move the cursor slowly or quickly? Sometimes it helps to move the cursor more slowly on Facebook as you're going into the game. I would see if that makes a difference. I could also make a difference if you put the cursor in all four corners of the screen before clicking into the game. Please let me know if this does not resolve the issue.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, advice. People need it. You give it. And sometimes you do well, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's hilarious. Which leads us to this week's Inquisition, which goes a little something like this.
What's the best or worst advice you've given to someone?
I want to go ahead and take this one right off the bat here.
Do it.
Because this is something that I'm doing it.
Do
doing it. So yeah, so me running the game that I do and being more or less more familiar with D&D than a lot of the players that I have. There's one guy that, like, man, he can make a character like you wouldn't believe. Like the barbarian he's working with right now. Oh my goodness, that guy. He is a truck. And his love for you is like a truck.
I thought, I see, yes. Berserker.
That's what he does. But other than that, most people who are making characters, they do come to me for a little bit of helpful advice here and there. And I really, really do like 4th edition for the way that, like, we can, kind of repurpose things for other things,
Right, yes.
And like I said, I think I must have mentioned this in the show at least once, where I turned the artificer class into a necromancer.
Yeah, I mean, that's just from ways of flavoring and all, but, I would say going to your DM for advice is a good idea, and everyone should do it all the time, and always trust your DM.
Yes. Especially when he tells you what's happening in the plot, ...
Yes.
But we just recently, we have, like, the game is being set in the Warcraft universe. We had to make a dryad, and it's more than just pick the race and call it good.
Right.
We wanted to actually kind of fulfill some of the stuff that happens in Warcraft 3. So we ended up repurposing the shaman class and giving it a lot of, like, saving throws to kind of do the whole, like, purge ability and whatnot. And what was kind of neat was I actually I did a little bit of tweaking. Like, for example, for the class to be kind of more or less optimal or at least not, like, gimped.
Right.
He kind of has to be in chain armor. Or at least the way that we built it, he does. But, like, it doesn't. Have you ever seen a dryad in chain armor?
No, but I mean, again, flavor.
So what I did to flavor it was I basically made it like bark armor.
Oh, yeah.
That she can dismiss at will. And the reason why I decided to do that was because I am keeping the armor check penalties and whatnot for the armor.
Yeah.
But I also wanted her to just be a frolicking dryad. So I gave her armor, like, basically the summoned armor ability for free.
Okay.
So it was kind of neat that way. We were just having this conversation actually about how our buddy Trevor is saying, like, 4th edition doesn't have any customization. No, it absolutely does.
Yeah,
but
it was the advice you were giving was just using the shaman.
Basically, yes, because it's kind of been up to me to formalize a lot of the different, like, traditional WoW classes and characters and types of creatures in terms of 4th edition rule set. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've been doing, and it's been working out pretty well. I've been really pleased, actually, with how it's with how versatile it has actually been. So that's what I've been doing for my players, and just the general stuff of, like, I don't know what to do with my plot right now because I feel like my character wants to kill another player character. So that's what I tend to do, and it tends to work out really well.
Nice. Yeah, mine harkens back to my old days of playing Counter-Strike.
Okay.
We used to just pop around servers and do all this stuff, and there were, so many people playing the game at the time. So never a want for a player base of ridiculous, stupid people. And I remember just the amount of times we would be sitting there and people would be chatting and talking like, oh, how do I do this? Or what's this? Or, how's this person doing this? And, me and my group of friends would always be the people going to me like, oh yeah, you can go ahead and, you can set your auto buy option by just clicking, by holding Alt F4. And stuff like that. And it'd be like in the middle of the game and like, oh yeah, someone would be like, oh, I'm going to do this. Gone, disconnect from server. They would come back like 5 minutes later. Oh man, what the heck did you just do? Oh, what's going on? And like, oh yeah, totally. Did you try this trick? Shift Alt F4. Gone. It's just things like that. And we used to do that all the time. And
now it's time for good advice, bad advice.
Yes. It got to the point where some of the more malicious of us would be saying things like, oh man, I'm getting all these clipping errors. What's going on here? Oh, well, you just have to go ahead and delete this folder out of your System32 file and, everything will be fine.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh no.
But see, that's just good, clean internet fun that goes back since time immemorial. I feel like that's kind of translated into most of the other games we've played. I've certainly seen people being told to Alt F4 out of WoW.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's like, oh, how do you access this menu? Alt F4, gone. So it just goes to show: never take advice from people over the internet.
Of course not.
Unless it's us.
Because
our advice is always good.
It's infallible. In fact, it is objectively good.
Yes. Remember, players, trust your GM always.
And so that's what this.
You really have lost your ability to talk.
That is this week's Inquisition, which goes like this.
What's the best or worst advice you've given to someone?
Send responses to the email at gamingdisquisition@gmail.com.
Reach us on Facebook, facebook.com/thegamingdisquisition, or on the Google+.
Get a hold of us on Twitter, @DisquisitorSam.
@DisquisitorMark.
On Twitter. So that's going to do it this week for the mailbag, and we are going to move right along to our next segment.
You mean the topics? Like the list of topics that, unless I'm mistaken, are important to everyone.
Everyone. Time for the news. And this week in the news. So remember when we talked about SimCity Forever and Ever, about EA was talking about it's completely impossible to make offline SimCity.
And yet again, just to interject, it was not impossible. They just didn't want to do it because it ruined their initial image of the game and how they wanted it to work.
Except they used the word impossible.
Well, because they're Wait, what's with the sharks?
I have no idea. Jim Sterling likes to put strange things in the top of his articles.
I know. I've seen those before. The shark.
Yeah, I can't remember what the name of this show was. It's like...
oh, man, that's going to bug me.
It really is. It's one of those Saturday morning cartoons with sharks, and it's like Biker Mice from Mars, except Sharks from Shark or something.
Yeah, the Sharks from Shark. I got it.
Yeah, so...
Anyway, yeah, SimCity.
So in any case, EA is actually now considering that, maybe we could make an offline version of SimCity, because, that's kind of how the core of the game is played.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, again, the fact that they're caving and they're just like, everyone's really complaining and everything sucks and everyone's like, oh, I'd totally play SimCity if it wasn't for this stupid DRM thing, which isn't a DRM, but whatever.
But see, that's the thing, is EA says that, DRMs are a failed business model. But it's not much better to MMO games that aren't really MMO. It's like SimCity could have had a lot of the different functionality we're talking about without a constant connection. And even if you didn't want to, you could just opt out of that sort of thing, because SimCity is primarily a single-player game.
Yeah, but although keep in mind, they haven't 100% said that they're going to. They have at least said, well, we are thinking about it. So I guess at that point it's like, are you going to play in offline mode or online mode? And there's going to be a slew of features that they may just arbitrarily decide you don't get unless, this might just be like just like throwing a bone to the dog type thing. Like, oh yeah, you can totally play in offline mode, but you can't do this and this and this and this and this and this and this because you're not in online mode. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, that would actually be pretty horrendous.
I know.
Well, think about it.
Okay, I thought about the worst thing that I could possibly do in this situation and said, well, if I'm EA, what would I do?
I mean, like it's one thing if they remove like achievements from offline play, which like I kind of don't care about. But if they just take out full-on features of the game, like, oh, you can't build like a police station or something.
Yeah, your city will be riddled with crime because you're not online. Take that.
Wow.
Not enough people are playing Lego City Undercover to justify all the crime in your city.
So yeah, that is potentially happening. Evidently, there's like some sort of survey to ask if we would like that to happen. Like,
you think
you need a survey for that, huh? EA?
Have you been to the internet?
I know. So, well, I don't know, because it seems like they're always online. You'd think they know.
Well, this bandwagon is not empty by far. There are several other people and companies that have decided to jump on the "we're sorry" bandwagon.
Like, I don't know, Microsoft?
Yeah, you remember all those restrictions that they were placing on the Xbox One? The used game thing, digital content, and
always online, or not always, but like the check-in online every day,
that kind of stuff. Yeah, well, apparently, nah.
So we're getting rid of all that, says Microsoft, which just proves our point that Microsoft was not doing it to offer us more features, but was doing it because they could.
Yeah, although do keep in mind that they are having to remove some functionality of some things that they wanted to do.
Like what?
Like, for example, you cannot play a disc-based game without the disc being physically in the machine because it's not going to have the ability to then share that content with multiple
which is exactly how it is now, and we're fine with that.
Yeah, but that was a new feature that I actually was kind of excited about.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it really that big of a hassle to find your disc?
I thought it was a neat idea to be able to have a library of games on my console, to be able to go over to a friend's house, log into his console, and then play those games without having to drag a stack of discs over.
I just don't see that as a problem that exists.
Like, you don't have friends to go over to their houses.
No, I mean, like, I have people like over the internet that I could perhaps I could, share my games with, and like, I've never considered that possibility as something I'd want to do.
I honestly thought it would be really neat. But again, that's something that, different players, different reasons, etc. But, the rest of the stuff that they're taking off there, again, I believe I had already mentioned when we talked about the Xbone before, is none of those problems really mattered to me. I didn't care. Like, I was already going to get the console anyway. None of these things were going to stop me from getting it because none of them affect me in any detrimental way. So now that those aren't there, I'm kind of losing content that I thought I would really enjoy. So for me, this kind of sucks.
I can't believe this. Like any old feature is just going to be like really cool for you, just because you would have to like actively seek out situations where that would solve a problem.
But keep in mind that the problems that they created with the things that they were trying to do didn't affect me. I mean, it's like, hey Sam, we're going to go ahead and come in and carpet bomb Malaysia. Is that cool with you? Is that going to affect you in any negative way? Well, obviously it's going to affect Malaysia, but how is that going to affect Sam in his game playing?
Well, maybe I don't want Malaysia to be carpet bombed.
Well, okay, yes, it's probably a bad analogy, but the point is...
I don't think it's so bad, because, it's not so...
Because the Xbone is, in its previous incarnation was, carpet bombing Malaysia.
Obviously, if you take it to the nth degree, obviously it doesn't hold up. But what I'm saying is that it's just one of those things that, it could negatively affect other users for, really not a particularly good reason.
Well, again, a good reason that doesn't benefit you, but does benefit people like me.
I really you couldn't have just brought the disc over.
Oh, again, I will yet again reiterate that it is probably a niche thing. It's probably something that isn't going to happen a lot. But the ability,
the use case of that feature is so unbelievably narrow.
Okay, the gained ability to do it with no negatives to how I would then use the system was fine with me. Now I'm losing that feature because of things that I didn't care about.
So let it be said here on the podcast. Let it be known that Disquisitor Mark is in favor of carpet bombing Malaysia, so that he can derive some weird benefit that he might use once in his lifetime.
It's true, but that's okay because I'm in charge of Malaysia.
All right then. But speaking of consoles, actually no. Speaking of Microsoft,
yeah, speaking of Microsoft, they yet again kind of went back on another thing.
So remember we covered months and months and months ago a game called Fez that had
lots and lots of trains.
Spaghetti. And so so the game called Fez that had a potentially game-breaking bug that would delete your save file in very, very small, like less than 1% use case.
And then, of course, Microsoft saying it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars to patch this game, so leave the bug in.
Well, I mean, they didn't say to leave the bug in, but that was Phil Fish's eventual conclusion that sorry, I can't patch this for $10,000 for this tiny use case. So sorry. Well, evidently, sometime in April, Microsoft went back on the policy of $10,000 for a patch, and then kind of didn't tell very many people. And so it came as a surprise to Phil Fish that was actually a thing that he was going to be able to do.
Yeah, I guess last week Microsoft was like, yeah, we're just going to stop charging people for that.
No. It was last April that they decided that was a thing.
It was last week.
Really?
Yeah.
Where did they get April out of?
I don't know.
Microsoft confirmed that they stopped charging for title updates
it says
back in April, which came as a surprise to some, Fish included.
Why does it say last week Microsoft confirmed that it stopped charging for title? Oh,
he confirmed.
They just confirmed that they stopped charging in April.
Yes, they were just. It was just one of those things that they did it, and then people were not paying attention, or they didn't announce it, or something.
They never sent out a thing to developers saying, "Oh, by the way, guys."
And it was actually, and it is going to be retroactive to titles released before April. So finally, after a year, Fez is going to get its patch.
Yeah. Obviously, Mr. Fish is pretty upset that they didn't actually let him know that they were going to do this.
Well, okay, so he's kind of upset they didn't let him know, but he's probably thankful at this point that he can actually get this done. So
yeah, so
and he will be.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, people going back on what they were doing, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay, so we're just gonna not do all these terrible things we kept saying we were going to do." Whereas Sony, on the other hand, is like, "Yeah, we're just going to keep being awesome."
It's true. So Sony, when they're talking so this is an article that comes off of gamesindustry.biz, wherein Andrew House, as Sony Computer Entertainment, is that what that is? SCE?
Yes.
Sony Computer Entertainment's Andrew House says
President.
that the PS4 is a return to form for the company, basically talking about how the original PlayStation 1 and 2 were essentially kind of the place where the independent developer was supposed to go.
Well, keep in mind, at the time, all we really had was, Sega and Nintendo, and that because the PlayStation came out before the Xbox. And they were basically they went away from a cartridge system because they didn't want everyone to have to develop a cartridge. They wanted to be able to say, hey, make a CD. CDs are cheap. CDs are easy. You don't need ridiculously specialized equipment to do it.
And it is a standard, and it has a large large storage for content and all that great stuff.
Exactly. So they basically said, you know what, we made those decisions on the PlayStation to make it easier for people to make games for our stuff, and to make it so indie developers and other people can join in on the fun and do these things.
Now, I will say this: I do recall reading in a book, kind of a history book for developers, that the original development team who made Crash Bandicoot, basically had to learn Japanese to figure out what it was that you had to do with this thing to program on it.
Yeah,
the technical manuals were not translated yet. So
yeah. Well, again, because Sony, and it was his first console, and released anywhere, and yeah. But I mean, they're really talking about the idea that the PS4 is really trying to push the company back to saying, hey, we're going to just make it easier to make games for us and to do all these cool things.
Regardless of what the actual development, climate was like for independent developers back then, I will say that the PS4 does seem to have an emphasis on having a wide berth of developers of all sorts.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this: I don't think that, to my knowledge, I don't think there's been an announcement that indie developers will be able to self-publish on the PlayStation Network like they can on Xbox Live.
Yeah.
And
they did say here, though, I mean, it does talk in the article saying that they've undertaken a significant amount of outreach to smaller developers.
They have. I don't know if you watched some of the footage for E3 for Sony, but they had this big montage of a whole bunch of indie game developers on stage playing their games.
Yeah.
So they're making a really big thing out of this. So
which is good.
So I guess we get more La Mulana or something.
Yeah,
but maybe somebody will strike gold. Who knows?
The more games we get out there, the more possibility that one of those games would actually be worth playing.
Or maybe we can actually learn what game development is supposed to be before we just jump in with head first into like, oh, I'm going to make the ultimate version of Castlevania 2.
But we're going to mix it with Dark Souls.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the old Magic card from the Unglued set. Look at me, I'm the DCI.
Oh yeah.
It was a stick figure throwing darts at a dartboard for choosing which cards to ban. It's like game development. It's like, oh, we're going to make it's an action game, and it's going to be a female lead, and she's going to have an animal sidekick.
Oh man, we can't do that. We can't have a female lead in our game. We got to scrap the idea.
We'll make her a bear, and it'll have an animal sidekick. Congratulations, we've made Banjo-Kazooie.
That's exactly what must have happened.
Yes.
All right, but so that said, between Sony and Microsoft, I do know that Microsoft was going back on indies being able to self-publish on Xbox Live, and since we haven't heard yay or nay on that in PlayStation, it's hard to tell how this is all going to pan out. And
yeah, but there is one shining example of something that I cannot wait to see on the Xbox.
Oh, really? And what is that?
Titanfall.
So Titanfall is a game that evidently everybody at E3 just completely loved because it won 6 awards at E3, including Best in Show, Best Original Game, Best Console Game, Best PC Game, Best Action Game, and Best Online Multiplayer.
Yeah, keep in mind, he did just say Best PC Game and Best Console Game. So the game just basically blew everyone out of the water. Just to give you an idea here, if anyone who listens to the show remembers the names Weston Zampella, Zampella, one of the people who I guess was responsible for one of the Call of Duty licenses.
This is Infinity Ward, by the way.
Yeah, if you remember Infinity Ward.
And that whole debacle with Bobby Kotick and Activision and really strange court goings on and really shady business practices. But that's all in the past. Now we're making Titanfall.
Yeah, Zampella actually went off and started Respawn Entertainment and had come up with this idea for Titanfall, which is a first-person war kind of in the future type shooter game. Oh, it just looks great. I'm sorry, I'm going to nerd out on it.
All right.
Okay, so the whole point behind this game is that they are going for a massive online multiplayer first-person shooter experience.
Why did you say massive? I'm pretty sure it's just a. Is it? I'm pretty sure it's just
they said something about having more players.
More players.
Having larger map, more players than what's average. Because
I wouldn't call MAG an MMO though, and I don't think they're going to go MAG big.
Fair enough. Although even then, the 16 player games you'll get on COD Blops are still relatively small.
Yeah.
But the thing about Titanfall though is at least at this current time where they're still just showing the game off and they haven't really finalized a lot of the stuff like the advancement, which there's going to be advancement because
goody, a leveling system in our competitive game.
Exactly. Which again, I'm brushing under the rug because I play Call of Duty now. You
brush a lot of stuff under the rug, let me tell you.
For the sake of entertainment, yes. The idea behind this game is that there are pilots, which are foot soldier type guys, like jack of all trades, special forces guys, who get a wonderful amount of tricks, like little jetpacks and like double jumps and cloaking and things like that. Whereas then there's also the Titans. Now, they actually said in one of the articles that they don't want to call them mechs because when people think of mech, they think of slow, lumbering, like mech warrior, BattleTech type things where, these things are just absolutely ridiculously big and they move so incredibly slowly. No. The Titans in Titanfall are, they're quick. They move really decently fast. It actually looked to me more like Armored Core with less flying. They're still big, heavy mechs, and I guess they don't jump, or they might not have like any sort of ability to fly. It was one of the other articles. But the idea is that these are giant battle suits that are all on the same battlefield as the small guys running around. And like during the gameplay video, which we're going to link, which is awesome. The pilot was running around killing people, and then he went out into an area where there wasn't a whole lot of fighting, and he called down a Titan, and it orbital dropped down right in front of him, and he got into it, and then just started running around just blowing stuff up, and it's just because you're not entirely helpless either when you're a pilot, because you can kill Titans with large weaponry, or they even had at one point where like one of the pilots jumped up on the back of the Titan, like tore away a panel and just started blasting inside, and just it was epic. This is one of those games where I looked at this and said, maybe I can convince my other Call of Duty friends to play this instead, because I want mecha. I want to run around on these awesome battlefields with double jumps and cool weaponry and all these kind of things. It's like what I wanted Dust to be. You know, it looks great.
All right, so I took a look at this footage, this Game of the Year E3 Best of Everything in All Times game.
Sure.
And so I broke down a little bit of analysis of the gameplay. So let's see. Right at the beginning, you have these pilots who are floating in this ship, and it's kind of like they have
lobby.
It's basically a lobby. It's just like, okay, so I guess this lobby looks kind of cool. So I guess that's warrants.
It gives you something more to look at than a screen and a list of names.
Oh man, that warrants best of show for sure. All right, so now at the beginning, but 50 seconds in, you have like this. You have one guy who's giving orders to other people, which makes me think this looks like a single player experience more than a multiplayer experience. Because like this is like, like voice acting and like, hand signals that like I can't think of. I can't see those being formalized for actual game controls.
Yeah, it didn't look like another player was giving the orders. It would look like it was an NPC that was standing at like a commanding officer who started saying things.
Now, moving on. So, just looking at the rest of the gameplay, it sure looks like Call of Duty all over again. Like just kind of like this ADD kind of shooter, where just like get the headshot and go around the corner and kill the dudes. So here we are with like another Call of Duty game, and I guess occasionally you get God mode. Except it's not quite God mode because, as we'll see later, so at a minute 50, we see a double jump mechanic and a wall jump mechanic.
That wall jump was awesome.
But it's wall jumping.
Keep in mind that what that means for me is that because keep in mind, in a lot of modern military shooters, a two-dimensional map means everything. Because, yes, there's going to be a couple small towers and maybe a window here and there, but there's very limited ways of getting to any point. In a game that involves jetpacks or anything that involves like a wall run mechanic or something that allows you to traverse areas in a more dynamic way, means that the battlefield is a lot more, dangerous. You're not just looking on a 2D plane of, guys are going to come from this door or this door, because even though the roof is open, they can't come through it. It's just, that's just set dressing. Might as well be a box with two squares in it.
I know, but what I'm saying is like, we've been double jumping since Unreal Tournament. This is not something particularly impressive here.
No, this game actually reminds me more of Planetfall 2 in the abilities, like the characters with jetpacks and the running around and the vehicles and stuff like that.
Well, that's just it. It's like, 2 minutes, 50 seconds. We call in vehicles because we've never seen that in a game before. Let's see, 3 minutes and 10 seconds. So an enemy pilot ejects after his Titan is destroyed. And then he gets sniped out of the sky by the same guy, but in his own Titan. So why eject if you're just going to get killed? Because
I don't think that's keep in mind the reason why he sniped the pilot who was getting out and falling down was because there were no other apparent threats. I mean, playing a lot of these first-person shooters, you can focus on the one guy, but if you're in the middle of a firefight and you drop the Titan and there are other Titans to shoot, you're not going to stop and shoot the pilot when there are other Titans to shoot.
I know, but it's just one of those false decisions of just if I stay in my cockpit, I will die, so I guess I will eject and hope.
Yeah, well, again, at that point, you're just nitpicking.
Well, I mean, but this is important because, if we're trying to make a competitive game that's really deep and really, there's a lot of cool and interesting decisions to make of should I do this, should I do that, really what this is doing is it just tramples over all of that in favor of style. This, even going further than that, let's see, at 3 minutes and 22 seconds, we find out that Titans can one-hit kill each other. Because as long as they're in close in combat, they can just rip the pilot out. Because
we do not know if that was a one-hit kill.
Maybe
there was
not.
Not enough information to know that was a one-hit kill. If anything, it was a very kind of, not graphic, I suppose, but a very visceral like finishing move type thing.
Maybe, but like, I mean, it just seems like why couldn't he rip out the pilot earlier than that? You know.
Well, again, we're just basing this off of the gameplay video, which again, I'll give you that. The fact that they set this up as a an intro to show these are cool things that can happen in this game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I have the distinct feeling that the actual gameplay is probably going to be a little less exciting looking just because of the way that players are going to start playing.
No, I think what's going to happen is the things that we're seeing are going to be the things that happen regularly. People are going to be sniped out of their escape pods. People are going to be ripped out of their Titans.
Yeah, but keep in mind, okay, take Call of Duty Black Ops 2, for example. You can call in a drop, like, you can airstrikes and things like that, but like if they get a care package, well, their care the helicopter that brings in the care package can get shot down. Well, why doesn't people do it all the time? Well, because it doesn't always happen, and if you get that care package, it's a huge bonus.
Well, no, what you can make the decision to put the care package in a place where nobody can access. Or
No, because the helicopter flies in over the map and can be shot down from anyone with line of sight to the helicopter.
Oh man, that's even worse then.
So the idea though is that, for the benefit, there's the risk of it getting shot down or whatever.
There's no risk though, because like when you talk about risk, what you're talking about is like, should I do this or should I do that? Like there's what am I trying to? How could I put this? Basically, what you're saying is that because the thing that you called in could get shot down, maybe you shouldn't call it in at all, and then just derive no benefit.
No, maybe you shouldn't choose that as a kill streak bonus, because you don't. Not everybody gets a care package. You actually can choose 3 kill streak bonuses from a big list of things, and care package is just one of those things. But the care package will drop off like a random good weapon, like a death machine or things like that.
But I don't like that as a decision, because unless you have context for whether or not you think it will be shot down, how can you possibly be asked to make that decision?
I guess it depends.
Like, it's stuff like this that, like, I'm thinking about constantly as I watch the Titanfall video. Let's see. In 3 minutes 30 seconds, we find out that vehicles can run people over. Yay!
Yeah, okay, that's pretty much a given.
3:54, we find out that this game has grenades. Whoopee! And then at 4:27, we found that ground troops can one-hit kill Titans because
again, we can't assume that it's a one-hit kill.
But what I'm saying though is like he ejects out of his thing, and for some reason he's not sniped. So because he was lucky enough to not get sniped, he lands on the other Titan and gets a free hit in. Okay,
I would like to point out, by the way, that when we look at this game to another game that involves giant mecha and pilots and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This takes Starhawk and fixes the issues that I had with it.
Maybe.
Okay, no. The fact that Starhawks were nigh indestructible to ground troops, and the fact that they could just run around willy-nilly, they could fly, they had all these things they could do that made being a ground troop completely ridiculous.
I thought of that, definitely, because you're right. Like, this is Starhawk, only perhaps these things will not be the strongest thing ever.
Yeah, and that's a huge improvement, especially considering what Starhawk had problems with.
I don't think it's a straight-up improvement, because, like, you have to solve the problem in ways that make sense. Like, just because it's no longer the strongest thing in the game doesn't mean that the game is completely that much better. No,
not necessarily better. I just think this is if anything, a more refined version of what drew me to play Starhawk to begin with. I mean, again, the mecha and the running around and the competitive gameplay and all that kind of stuff, it really did interest me in Starhawk, and that's why I got it, and that's why I wanted to get into it, and that's why I was so excited about it when I was talking about it. Looking at Titanfall, it's like, well, okay, now having played Starhawk, I can look at Titanfall and say, well, now the ground troops, like, make more sense. They look more prepared to deal with the problem of having mecha on the battlefield. They're more maneuverable than you were in
honestly,
in
I think
Starhawk.
the Titans in this game are going to be underpowered, because, like, the fact that anybody can pop around any corner with a Titan-killing weapon and then duck back around the corner.
But I guess the problem with that is that anyone can duck around the corner with any pilot-killing weapon and do the same exact thing. But the Titans move quick enough that these aren't mecha that are just going to stand there and get shot.
Can they jump?
Okay, the fact that they can dodge
They sort of, but
No,
like
they actually listed a dodge mechanic.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that if you don't know where anybody is at, and like they're flying up in the sky and like on the roofs and everything and wall jumping and double jumping, like you just never know where they're going to pop out. So I think that those things are going to be tremendously vulnerable.
I guess my concern with it would be if they do the kill streak style thing like they do in Call of Duty. If they make it so you can only get a Titan to come down or to pilot if you like get to a certain number of kills or you get enough points, and like you cannot call down another Titan until you've gotten that amount of points back or something like that. It's really going to make it. It's going to get to the same problem of Starhawk of, oh, well, we can't afford to get a Starhawk on the board, so I guess we lose. You know, and again, it's going to mildly solved by the fact that pilots can still take them down. But an entire wall of Titans versus an entire wall of pilots, I'd probably bet on the Titans. But again, without seeing more of the game. Again, this is an early video. It looks very pretty, by the way. For those of you who actually care about graphics, like me, it looks gorgeous. It looks like it should, and the Titan design is very fluid, very realistic looking. There's not a whole lot of just like superfluous pieces to it. It actually looks like a more functioning mecha. Still humanoid with again more Armored Core style, but it looks very, very good.
So here's what's going to happen: is this apparently best of show E3 game? We're going to play this game for like a year and then find something else shiny to play, and then we'll completely forget about Titanfall because I don't see what this game has done to really merit a whole lot of attention other than that ADD kind of like, oh, I'm not like I just need the next greatest shiny thing to play for a while and then I'll forget all about it.
Well, I guess in my case, it's like I'm probably still going to play Call of Duty. And I'm probably going to end up getting the next one, but that's entirely based on what my friends are playing. If I can convince them to get into Titanfall and play this instead, it's something where, sure, another game comes out down the line. Well, if all my friends go to play it, I'll probably follow the herd.
That's the one thing that I can say as a saving grace to this game is maybe it'll draw people away from Call of Duty. But like, I'm just saying, like, this game is really not that impressive in the grand scheme of things.
Again, all I have to say is, by watching the video and reading the articles that I have about Titanfall, I'm excited. I'm going to reserve some of my excitement again just to see if they make some of the same pitfalls that Starhawk had. But I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, and lastly in the news, so remember that game Star Wars: The Old Republic? Because I kind of don't, but
the free-to-play MMO, yeah.
Yeah, which free-to-play MMO? I've never heard, like, that's got to be like 300 of those.
Right.
Okay, but anyway, so I'm going to actually leave you this for you to explain, because you played it, and I don't quite understand what this is talking about exactly.
Yeah, basically, the idea is that there's, like, You have your the characters' companions and stuff like that you can do. Well, all the different classes have their own different list of companions. Like for example, the Jedi gets a smuggler friend and a tank friend and a healer friend and things like that. Well, the bounty hunter, one of the things that you got at one point was you get a Jawa. It's awesome tank Jawa. Now, from what I'm looking at here, the idea is that apparently, who made this game? Trying to remember
who made the game.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who made Old Republic.
Old Republic. It's BioWare.
Is it BioWare?
Yeah.
You're right. It is BioWare.
It has all the hallmarks of a BioWare game.
How long has it been since I played the game?
I know, right?
Well, basically, what they did is they decided that bounty hunters are able to get an Ewok.
Okay.
An Ewok companion to run around. Basically, the idea was, like, when they first announced it, they're like, okay, if you're over Legacy level 40 and you have 1 million credits, you get this Ewok. And again, this is just for bounty hunters, so, take it how you will. But I guess what they decided after the fact was that they're like, no, we're actually just going to charge, cartel coins for it.
I think it's either or.
From what I understand, they took out the ability to buy it in game.
I don't think so, because there's when it talks about how we're like the way that people like. I'm going to quote from the article. It drives some people nuts to have their hard work, whatever it takes to get Legacy level 40 and acquire 1 million credits, given a monetary value. That's kind of insulting.
Okay, so I guess in this case they're talking about the fact that you cannot buy him with cartel coins. You have to buy him with the in-game currency.
No. It's both. But what it is like people are complaining that people can buy something in a free-to-play game, but they haven't earned the right to have it.
Okay,
because
so this is okay. So I guess what I was trying to do is I was trying to maybe see this in a different light rather than the same argument we've always heard forever in any MMO when someone is given something for easier than another person got it. It's the classic example of, oh, they didn't earn this thing. They went the easy route. They just paid real money. Or, oh, they got it when it came out. They got this mount when it was available on this other thing rather than having to go through the trouble of getting it this other way.
I disagree that they're the same thing because in the case of the bear mount of Zulaman, there actually was an actual skill requirement to actually acquire that bear.
But then if you just make the bear available to purchase from Blizzard,
right? What I'm saying is if you no. What this is work and grinding as opposed to a measurement of skill,
I suppose,
which I think is totally different because people who have actually really people who have an understanding of a particular piece of content that allows them to it's basically like selling achievements essentially.
Yeah,
is kind of the idea, but not the case here because what this is the same thing that's been in every single free to play game where you can grind for a bunch of time and get this, or you can buy it now. And I don't understand what people's problems are. This is free to play. This is what we wanted, and we just for some reason we can't get it through our heads that what we want is this thing. This is how it works.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the free-to-play model. If you want to work for it and you want to grind for it, then you can. If you want to pay for it, you can. It's kind of the whole point behind a free-to-play model.
Honestly, I think the free-to-play model is just kind of silly because it usually necessitates some kind of addition of grinding into the game. Maybe not so much in Old Republic because it starts free-to-play, but it is one of those things where as soon as you introduce microtransactions, you have this mentality of in order for this to be fair for the people who don't, to make sure it's not pay to win, we have to give the ability to grind to unlock stuff in the outside of paying. And
by the way, I was wrong. Treek is the bounty hunter. He is the name of the Ewok.
Yes, it's actually
it's available for any character class.
I think it's a female Ewok actually. Take a look, but
her. Yep, says her.
Yeah,
but it doesn't matter because it's a tiny space teddy bear and it's completely gender neutral anyway.
What's kind of funny is that people are also complaining that how in the hell did Ewoks get off of Endor?
Yeah, Old Republic Endor wasn't. Anyway, the point being is that's a valid complaint. But I'm kind of done talking about free to play at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think we're done with talking about the news for this week. So we are going to go to the break and let you listen to some tunes. When we come back, we're going to be talking about a little old something that we like to talk about now and again, the whole D&D thing, except what's on the horizon for good old D&D Next. We haven't talked about them since show number 4 or something like that.
It's been a while, so we're gonna touch base and see what's going on.
And all that more coming your way after the break, so sit right there. This is the Gaming Disquisition with Sam and Mark, and by our own volition, in this edition of our Disposition Inquisition,
we'll be back after this brief intermission. There you go.
more.
The Gaming Disquisition with Sam and Mark continues. I am Sam.
I am Mark.
This is the Disquisition.
And the Disquisition is here to stay.
That we are. Main topic is coming your way in just a moment. Music from the break this week. Big announcement. Final Fantasy VI Balance and Ruin released.
Woohoo!
That would be the OC Remix album dedicated to remixing tracks from Final Fantasy VI. This will be their 40th album that they've put out. Can you believe that?
That's pretty awesome.
Now, according to the website, Balance and Ruin features 74 tracks from 74 artists, ranging from the soundtrack of Final Fantasy VI for the SNES. It was produced to help promote video game music, Nobuo Uematsu's amazing compositions, and the talented artists that contributed to this project. Let's see. On October 25th, 2012, Overclocked Remix successfully funded its first Kickstarter project for this very album. Our funding goal was $30,000, which would go entirely toward the physical production of the 5-disc Balance and Ruin, licensing fees to pay to Square Enix, and hiring of live musicians. Thanks to 2,509 fans from around the world, we greatly surpassed our original goal and ultimately raised a total of $153,633.
You know, just 5 times the amount they were looking for.
That's just kind of how Kickstarter works. Is that if you've got the name and you got the publicity, you're gonna hit your mark.
Mm-hmm.
But so we have the Final Fantasy VI Balance and Ruin album out now. I've listened to it and it is great. Of special note, oh my goodness. Well, we're about to feature. We have already featured 2 tracks from the album. But I did want to call this track out. The Impresario by Jake Kaufman and Tommy Pedrini. Holy crap, that song. Basically, so there's something interesting. A little funny story about that song. It's as you can tell, the Impresario has to do with the opera.
Yep.
If you think about it, the opera in Final Fantasy VI never finishes. Nobody knows how it ends.
Exactly. Yeah, there was the fight. There was the fight at the end over the girl, and then Ultros drops down, and the fight happens. And
the 2 lead actors get smashed, and now what do we do? And Locke, will rescue Celeste. Oh,
right.
Crap.
Yeah.
And so what's funny about what's great about the Impresario by Jake Kaufman and Tommy Pedrini. Mm-hmm. They basically do a 1-song rock opera in the style of Queen and finish the opera.
Oh, man.
It has an ending now.
Oh, that's awesome.
So check that out, guys. It's fantastic. But as for the other tracks, I did want to say one thing about the Balance and Ruin. So far, the only disappointment that I've had so far is the Victory Fanfare was not a full-on disco track. I was so disappointed. How could you have missed this? Oh well, it was pretty great anyway. So if you'd like to check out the whole album, you can check it out at ff6.ocremix.org. Now, as for the tracks that we have featured on the show, our first track is called something I can't pronounce, so I had the internet do it for me. It is
La Montaña de los Caballos.
This is a track that comes to us by XPRTNovice, the Final Fantasy VI track Mount Colts. And unfortunately, we don't have any liner notes for this track as of yet. I think those are going to be forthcoming. But I did like this track. It was kind of visionary in a way because like it takes the Mount Colts theme and brings it more towards kind of a flamenco style. And,
I loved it.
Like it was like it makes a lot of sense when you really listen to it. But like it took a little bit of vision to get it there. So I really appreciated that. The next track is called A Fistful of Nickels. This is a track that comes to us from Andrew and Jillian Aversa, Jeff Ball, XPRTNovice, and with some session work from Frank Witkam, who did harmonica on the track.
Mm-hmm. I believe this is actually a reference because this is Shadow's theme from Final Fantasy VI.
It's Shadow's theme, but it's kind of a double reference, as you'll see from the liner notes. So Andrew Aversa writes. Ennio Morricone, I believe is how you say that guy's name, is one of my favorite composers, and when I was thinking of ways to treat Shadow's theme, I kept coming back to spaghetti western style influenced by such scores as The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and A Fistful of Dollars. I could hear the arrangement in my head, but to really capture that authentic western vibe, I needed help. Jill, XPRTNovice, Jeff, and session player Frank Witkam truly breathed life into my MIDI arrangement and gave it the driving, rugged feel I was going for. Every performance is spot on, and I'm thrilled with how it turned out. I hope you agree that a character as enigmatic and awesome as Shadow deserves this kind of grand musical treatment. That from Andrew Aversa.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the whole point behind a Fistful of Nickels being, stated that Shadow would kill his own,
slit his own mom's throat for a nickel.
Yeah. So very appropriate, but very well handled too. The kind of the whistling style and all that. It reminded me of the opening to Wild Arms, which I'm one of my favorite tracks. I love the kind of style, very Western, but still kind of upbeat and neat. So I really, really enjoyed this one too. I have a feeling I'm probably going to be really, really enjoying every track on this album. So, but specifically, I really, really like that the style of that. It very much reminded me of a lot of other songs that I like.
Absolutely, it was like honestly I really dug the authenticity of it. Really, like the whistling was right there where it needed to be. There was kind of moments with the harmonica kind of reminded me a little bit of like a combination of StarCraft and Firefly. Oh yeah, that kind of thing. What else can you say about that? Because I'm missing some links. I'm going to go and grab those real quick.
To be perfectly honest, just talking about the Balance and Ruin album in general. We've been talking about it for a while, ever since they announced the Kickstarter. And when I walked in today and Sam told me that it was out, my jaw hit the floor. And I'm like, oh man, I kind of want to go home right now and download it. F the podcast. I'm just going home. But I'm definitely going to be looking into that when I get home, because this is going to be playing pretty much non-stop in my house for the next foreseeable future.
And if you would like to get your hands on that track, on the album itself, there's the previous website, ff6.ocremix.org. As for the artists themselves, if you'd like to find out more about what they do, you can find XPRTNovice at josephzija.com. That's josephzieja.com. Check out Andrew Aversa at zirconmusic.com. Check out, let's see. Check out Jillian Aversa at jillianaversa.bandcamp.com. And check out Jeff Ball at jeffedwardball.com.
Mm-hmm. You got Frank Witkam in there too, right?
I think he's just a session player, but I couldn't find any information about him. Hang on, let me try to Google him.
And I will talk incessantly while you do so.
You can tell people where else you can find links.
Oh, well, you can always check the show notes on Facebook. I figured people would know that by now, but if they don't, make sure you check them, because you can find the higher quality versions of their tracks and the links to their websites, including the one he just looked up.
So, I'm not sure if this is the right guy, but I think if you find Frank Witkam, Frank Witkam, you can read read a different language. Or something.
That's a Twitter. Yeah, Twitter.
Is there a website in here somewhere I can find? I don't think there is.
Anyway, moving on. Frank Witkam, thank you.
Definitely, thanks for that. All right, so moving right along.
Dug it done.
So we're gonna go back to D&D Next, D&D 5th edition, as your tablet is out of power.
Apparently,
I don't know what to tell you about that.
That's fine. I can do this.
Do you have notes that you need?
I'm good.
Okay.
Besides, due to the wonders of technology, I have a phone with Evernote.
Okay, go do that. But in any case, so it's been, I think it was like episode 4, I think is where the last time we talked about this. And so where has it gone since then? Well, I've been doing a little bit of reading on the blogs themselves about some of the design notes, some of the goals that they've been going for. And I think that on a number of levels, I think they are kind of delivering on at least some of the goals that they set out at the beginning when we first mentioned it. Let's recap some of those goals, actually. Basically, one of them being that they want to have like a very modular design, and what they mean by that, I think the way that they've kind of fully clarified that is they're going to have a really, really simple base rule set. Like I think. From what I recall reading, I believe that they want their base rule set for just like the bare minimum to play to be like 16 pages or less.
Yeah, pretty much. They're really going over the fact that they wanted the base rules to be very simple, easy to use, easy to get into, not a lot of fluff. And I think we talked about this before about the idea of, you basically have base stats and some things needed to accomplish vaguely anything that you'd ever need to accomplish. But then giving you the options of, you want to then get into skills. Okay. You want to get into feats. You want to go do this. And then just having those available to the players who actually want to use them. Or even in definite strong case, any DM who wants to include them in his game, based off of many different factors.
So that's the really interesting thing, though, that you mentioned when you talk about how like these other components of the game, like some basic stuff like skills and feats, are kind of optional in some ways. There's one of the things I think probably the strongest thing that I've seen out of the redesign of the system, the impressions that I'm getting at any rate, is that there seems to be kind of a focus on trying to increase the flexibility of the characters as opposed to increasing their specificity. Oh, that's my microphone. So sorry about that. So basically, increase the flexibility of the characters as opposed to making them really, really specific in their expertise.
Yeah, well, although that's going to obviously be something some people can do.
Well, you can,
get
but
as specific as you want.
But what I mean by that, though, is that you can have the specificity, but it also gives you a little bit of more, like it kind of rounds the character out a little bit, and it solves a problem, I feel, of D&D. Where the problem being, D&D is kind of like this gigantic circle of counters.
Right.
Where like if you want to hard counter your players, you can absolutely do it with like a creature that has this set of abilities or like is incorporeal or, just like it. So by basically making it so that, you're not making a character specifically to kill this one thing and he's terrible in all other scenarios. They're actually trying to make it so that it's a lot easier to get into an expertise, but still have relevant abilities otherwise.
Yeah, it actually kind of reminds me of how they handled like radiant damage and stuff in 4th edition. The fact that like everything takes normal damage from radiant except for like most undead who then have a vulnerability to radiant. Whereas like in previous editions, if you're like an undead hunter, you can channel this power that'll only affect undead, or you can do this that'll only affect vampires, or very, very specific. So like a vampire hunter in 3.5 was worthless against anything other than his chosen foe. And whereas in 4th edition, if your character just does a lot of radiant damage, well, he's still effective against everything else. He's just more effective against his chosen foe.
Exactly. Yeah. So how are they doing that in 5th edition? So here's a couple of ways that I found. So first off, spells in the game are going to remain pretty highly specialized, but with the ability to fall back onto standards. And what I'm not quite sure exactly how they're going to make this go. But essentially, it's going to be like, I prepared, purify. My favorite example: purify food and drink today.
Right.
But like, if you don't happen to need it, you're going to be able to have these certain spells that you always like. It's like spontaneous casting for a cleric, only carried a little bit further out. So like a wizard would be able to do like Frostbolt, or I don't know what the...
Right, yeah, I get you. Magic Missile.
Like Acid Arrow or something like that.
Yeah.
Those are just going to always be available spontaneously. It seems to be what they're going for.
Which is a really good way of doing it. I mean, if you're not expecting a combat encounter and you prepare a bunch of spells for utility and suddenly you get into combat, you don't want your wizard to just sit off and go, well, I guess I'm not in this combat.
Which is the big problem I always had with spell slots, is that like you usually don't have a lot of context. I mean, you have to work really hard to attain the context for what spells that you're going to use today. So being able to still have those specialized spells, but not have them lock you out of core things of your class, is probably a good way to go about using the spell slot system, which it does seem like they want to do. One thing, I don't know if you got this impression, but I feel like they're kind of returning to AD&D a little bit in some ways.
I actually see this more of like a 3.0, 3.5. Because AD&D there was a lot of things very odd about that. But
I'm not saying they're going to go back to Thaco or something.
No, but they are incorporating some ideas from it, or at least they're the general idea behind them, if not the actual systems themselves. But I don't know. I seem to think this looks more to me like a 3.5 reboot, rather than like an adjustment of 4th edition. Okay.
Well, it certainly has less to do with 4th edition than anything.
Yeah, I actually, one of the things, just to kind of go back to where their design goals are, they've been talking about the 3 pillars of D&D. And that's something that I think is really important to their design decisions and kind of the direction they're taking a lot of stuff. Because I think what we've been talking about almost entirely is all about the combat. And that's only one of the 3 pillars of D&D, at least according to them. And that's something that, like, we've been talking a lot about hit points and class selection and da-da-da-da-da-da.
Which is basically the sum total of all of D&D as of current.
Yeah, but they're really trying to kind of invigorate the rest of D&D and what makes everything else. I know we've talked about, like, what systems do you use for roleplay? What systems do you use for this and da-da-da and all these things? Well, they're really trying to incorporate these into the core game to make it like, you know, like if you've ever actually looked at the exploration or the adventuring thing in like the player's handbook, it's like 5 pages long and it's just some numbers for stuff that may or may not be handy.
When you talk about adventuring, you need to specify what that is, though.
Like the chapter, the adventuring chapter in the player's handbook.
What is the adventuring chapter referencing?
What the adventuring chapter has in it is movement speeds, overland travel, how much you can pick up, and a brief explanation of what some of the alignments are.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So the kind of thing where like it's like the logistics essentially of like getting around from place to place and whatnot.
Yeah, so what they're doing is the 3 main pillars of D&D as they've been making it here is interaction, exploration, and combat. Again, we've been focusing a lot on the combat stuff, but I think it does merit at least a little explanation of what they're going for with interaction and exploration.
What are they going for? Because, like, I mean, like, we can define those things, and they can say they're pillars of D&D, but what are they doing to support them? Actually,
that's a very good question. For example, the interaction pillar is something that I'm actually really interested in. As a DM, one of the things that has always been annoying to me is I hate dealing with the actual rules for the diplomacy skill. The fact that there's like that 6 layers of hostile, unfriendly, untrusting, nonplussed, a big list of things. And like, if they get over this, then they can get a this, and they can. It's kind of ridiculous, and I never use it. I just kind of base things off of what I think makes sense at the time. But it's an entire system that I just don't use. But the interaction pillar, what they're really going for is, and they're actually saying they're focusing on a framework that the DMs can use to manage non-player characters.
That was a quote, by the way, in case Mark did not communicate that clearly.
Yes, I was using my quote voice. But like,
which is very similar to Disquisitor Mark voice.
Yes. Just to go down a couple of the bullet points here, just to kind of lightly touch. It's talking about like categories for NPCs, like fears, goals, mannerisms, things like that. Things that some DMs do anyway, but it was never actually like set in any sort of rule, or it was maybe even just kind of vaguely said, you might want to do these things.
In some ways, I feel like those are kind of equivalent to, like, say, a 4th edition keyword, as opposed to just, being like some nebulous concept that the GM has to figure out.
Mm-hmm. It actually talks about using like charisma checks or whatever other checks that as appropriate. And how to use role-playing to manage the conversations, and gives, again, this is like very light touch, and because they're not going to tell you how to role-play, but they also talk about like how to invoke NPC traits to influence them. Because I know we've talked a little bit about like, the scene has a trait, this person has a trait.
Well, that would be the fate system, and that's actually the first I've read about D&D having any kind of hearkening to that.
Yeah, and it talks about, like, it says specifically, quote, the system allows the character to attempt to invoke these traits to influence an NPC. Threaten an NPC with a specific fear the character has, and the NPC could cave to your demands. Offer to help the NPC achieve goals, and the character might form an alliance with you. Miss the mark, and you might trip over the NPC's hatreds or rages, turning this person against you with one ill-considered proposal.
So right now, I feel like that quote, though, is still kind of fluff. Like, just like, this is what we hope to represent with our rules. And, like, I don't know if they've actually told us anything about, like, how they're going to do it.
Well, for example, next bullet point here. Quote, the interaction rules allow a DM to classify an NPC as hostile, neutral, or friendly. So, I mean, they went from a 6 or 7 thing down to 3. Charisma checks cannot change this attitude. Instead, the attitude determines the range of NPC reactions from best to worst case. In favorable situation, a hostile NPC might look the other way or offer you some small aid, but they're not going to suddenly become your dear ally. With a blown check, you can expect an NPC to take actions to work against your goals. By the same token, friendly will offer at least a minimal aid and might take on enormous personal risk to help you. Neutral might oppose you or help you depending on your check, but the idea is that actually having it in there where, like, one thing that's always been annoying about that system is, like, okay, you come up against someone who's hostile. Oh, I rolled like a 50 diplomacy check. Oh, he is now your best friend and loves you forever. It's like, because the way the system works, by the rules, a high enough check would put them the entire way up that chart and just be like, they hate you, now they love you, unconditionally. And it's like, actually changing that to work a little bit different, I think it makes a little bit more sense.
If you think about it, like that's the kind of progression that would be best reserved for over time, and the fact that they're trying to make the way you described the dispositions of these characters, they do feel really permanent or at least long lasting, and I feel that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That like you can only overcome those dispositions only so far.
Yeah, the key quote here is that, or the one quote that I saw in here that makes the most sense of describing it, is saying the key to the system is to give a DM a structured way to take note of an NPC's traits, allowing the system to speak to them in a consistent way, while also ensuring that charisma checks don't turn into some sort of mind control. Which is, again, the big problem that I've always had with, that the whole, remember the Jumplomancer?
The Jumplomancer, yes.
You get to the point where your diplomacy check goes over like a 70, and suddenly everyone around you just falls in love with you unconditionally, and because your cheetah jumped in the air like 100 feet. It's kind of ridiculous. But to move on, the next one, exploration. I've also been very interested in this. Although it doesn't mean as much in my games, I'm intrigued with how they're handling it. It seems to me that they're really trying to give a sequence of how to just make an adventure. Like, they're going to say like, an
adventure in a very strange accent. Yes.
The idea that, okay, instead of like an ongoing big story-driven campaign where it is constantly the one, like how a lot of my games are, the big epics, where instead of having a series of smaller adventures, it's one massive adventure and then a bunch of side quests. Where the one they're going for is a little bit more of we're going to talk about like if the players just wander out into the wilderness randomly, or if they're actively looking for adventure, and these are the ways we can do this. And like they talk about how to deal with like time scale, about movement, how to deal with a lot of just the kind of the minor things you would think about just like going out to look for stuff. But
maybe, but I don't think it's limited to just that though, because like I think that you can use those same kind of rules to simulate an actual countries at war where troop movements is very, very important, or just not that you're just going out to fight random encounters a la Final Fantasy, but that you're just kind of you're purposefully moving about in kind of but in more of a player driven way. No, that's player motivated way, right? Essentially, so that can go both ways.
Yeah, and they just to go over one or two bullet points here, just to kind of talk about what they're doing with exploration. They're talking about, for example, we've removed the sliding timescale and we've instead broken the rules into dungeon exploration, also used with ruin, city travel, other tactical level exploration, and overland travel. Overland travel using a 1 hour increment, and dungeon exploration uses 1 minute. So if they are not currently in a combat or in a city or someplace where there's going to be like constant interaction, everything is done in hour increments. So just breaking that up formally is a good thing they can do. And that's something that some DMs have done this stuff, and that's probably where they're getting a lot of their playtest things.
And I mean, this is basically just stuff that we kind of have systems for, essentially. So not knowing the specifics on it, there's not really a lot to talk about right now, just the fact that they're thinking about it.
Yeah, and they also say each exploration scale has a set of actions with overlap where appropriate. So, whereas on the exploration on a smaller scale, you have move, minor, standard, etc. Whereas with the larger scale, things aren't being done in a 1 minute increment, so you're not going to have to check every minute to make sure you're not getting lost, or, you're not going to have to check every 5 minutes to do this, that, or the other thing. So, for example, what this means is, for spells, if you're going to have a spell that is going to help you with overland travel, there's no point in having it be a 1 round per minute spell, or things like that. They're going to be able to focus on just having that time scale make more sense. Again, think about how a lot of the spells work and how those durations are. And it's technically my spell only lasts 21 hours, so we can't travel for 4 of those hours, so we'll have to do this and I'll have to cast it. It's just kind of ridiculous. So hopefully...
But who travels for 24 hours at a time?
Right. They also go on and add optional rules for weather, rules for environmental dangers, yada, 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 which they've already had. And again, but they're optional, so, and again, a lot of people I know just kind of vaguely go over those unless they're really important.
It's kind of funny when I really think about it. I feel like D&D 3, AD&D 3.0, 3.5, 4.0, they're all kind of modular systems in a way, because we just kind of blatantly ignore a lot of things.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that they've kind of seen when it comes to creating this game. And they really know that people are like, oh, well, we're just going to ignore this rule because we don't like it. We're going to ignore this rule because we don't like it. So what they did is say, okay, well, here's the very basic rule set. Now modify it to how you like it without having to get rid of rules. You just don't pick them up in the first place.
Yeah, well, here's what you do is you basically, like, here's collections of rules that are designed to be together.
Yeah.
And, it just kind of provides a little bit better, perhaps a better roadmap. We'll see how well they do.
Yeah, I'd say that the one thing I did want to cover, at least I want to talk about while we had some time.
Well, I haven't done the thing with the thing.
Oh, okay.
Remember we were talking about how, like, the D&D was increasing the flexibility of things?
Okay, go ahead and continue with the flexibility thing.
Yeah, because honestly, it kind of launches us into some of the other strange, perhaps strange things about the way that the system is run nowadays in regards to, like, feats and skills and whatnot.
Yeah, go ahead.
Another example of how they're increasing character flexibility. Here's a really specific one. So the ranger has a favorite enemy, as we've always known, and it gave him a bonus to that enemy when they hunt that enemy.
Right.
The thing is, they're also giving you a more generalized bonus depending on what your favorite enemy is. Something that's useful in other scenarios. So if you have favorite enemy dragon, you'll get the bonus against the dragon, but you also have immunity fear. So if you're in a scenario where, like, you're fighting some undead things and they have, like, a fear aura,
well, like, if you're not afraid of dragons, you ain't going to be afraid of undead, right?
It will help you in situations where you were not expressly building yourself to be to be good,
right?
And that's one of the things that feats kind of ended up being, like, really super specific in some cases, and then super general in others.
Like when a feat says you are immune to the fear aura that are used by dragons. Well, that fear aura is, it doesn't say by liches or by anything else. It says by dragons, and by the writ of the rule, that feat is only ever usable when there's a dragon nearby.
But the thing is, if there's also the cleave or, like, the power attack feats, which are always relevant.
Yeah, completely ubiquitous feats that just are useful in every situation.
Yeah, so I mean, like, that's how we get a lot of the staples that we get in various feats.
Yeah.
Now, this is perhaps one of the most interesting bits because it has to do with the skill system, which we've said the skill system is optional, and it's kind of strange to think about it that way, but it makes a little bit of sense once you explain it. So. The big never-ending argument between 3.5 and 4th edition is, should they have condensed the skills down to, like, the 10 or so that they did?
Right.
Or was it better when you had, like, a spot and a search, know? And, like, and I personally was a fan of condensing them because, like, how many skills can you really, really have? The big argument I always hear in favor of, like, the way that 3.5 did things is that, well, what if I want to have a character who specializes in appraise or something like that? I want to be the party appraiser. And, like, I just kind of think to myself, well, you can just say that you're the dude who appraises things in 4th edition because it's automatically appraised, so just say you're the guy who did it. It doesn't matter. Because, like, at some point, like, if you take that mentality of, like, things are different from each other, like, you can use it as an excuse to add skills ad infinitum.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's climb and there's running and then there's swimming.
Yeah, why isn't there a repelling skill?
Like, what? How about if we can break swimming into, like, the
diving,
like the backstroke and the crawl stroke and the butterfly stroke, and
I've actually seen systems that have done that.
And the carrying somebody else stroke and the swimming while you're having a stroke and where do you stop? So. What's happened here in 5th edition is they have kind of found what is an interesting compromise. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet, but it has my interest. And what they're doing is it has to do with a little bit of how the system in general works. Because what they want to do is they want to have you constantly rolling ability scores, as opposed to your attacks and your skills and your saving throws and everything else.
It makes a lot of sense.
So basically unifying what the game is asking you to roll. Now, how it applies to skills. And a particular branch of skills is proficiencies. Now, we're not talking about, like, weapon proficiencies. We're talking about, like, things that are very specific in their expertise. Something like sailing, as an example.
Right.
Sailing is a discipline that is largely unlike many others, so it seems to warrant its own kind of its own kind of thing.
Yeah, whereas
in the system.
nowadays it's like profession sailor would be what you would roll.
Perhaps. Or no, I see what you mean, like in the current systems then. Okay. Yeah. So what they've done here, though, is they have turned it into a binary profession or proficiency skill, where you spend what amounts to a skill slot on the sailing proficiency. And you have it or you don't. You can't spend points to improve it. But then when you are then asked to sail, you then make some relevant ability check, like dex or wisdom or what have you, depending on what it is you're trying to do. And the difference being that you had to have the sailing proficiency to even make the check in the first place.
Interesting. I'm a little concerned about that, if only because it's one of those things where there's a lot of overlap in human experience and just in general experience.
There is.
And the idea, though, is that, like, if you don't know how to sail, like, but you're on a boat and you're forced to make any sort of check whatsoever, is it one of those things where, well, you shouldn't have gotten on the boat if no one knew how to sail, so you're basically all just dead? Or,
That said, though, I mean, sailing is really super specific, I feel. Like, if you don't know what you're doing sailing, I think you're going to die. But what I'm saying, though, is, like, how this actually achieves what you're talking about with the overlap of human experience. It means that you can, someone with both the sailing and, say, the riding skills, like, will be able to use the same dexterity check. So it kind of ends up being that bit of overlap that some guy is just good at this whole grouping of skills.
Interestingly enough, it actually kind of reminds me of Dark Heresy.
Yeah.
Except that the way they did it is if you do not have the skill, like originally, if I remember correctly, the basic core book said if you do not have the skill, you cannot make the roll, like at all. If you don't even have it as a basic skill. Then I believe later on they said, well, if you don't have the skill as a basic skill, you can make it at like a minus 20 or 30 or something like that to the percentile system. So 20 or 30% less chance of you being able to succeed. So I mean, it got pretty ridiculous, especially if it was something your character wasn't good at. But the idea being is that, well, if you don't know how to do it, you can try to blunder your way through it. But in this kind of system, it's like, well, if you don't have a sailor, no one gets to make the roll. It's not. And I guess what gets me is that, like, well, they could blunder around and just make some dex checks, but is it just like, does the DC shoot up, or do they just get heavy minuses? I mean, same thing effectively, but just as the pure system says, you just fail auto.
I think what it is that they're trying to cut down on the idea of, like, people trying to do things that, like, statistically they just shouldn't. Right. Maybe they're on a boat and, like, maybe they have to sail it, but it kind of comes down to a little bit of discretion on the GM's GM side. Like, if you know that nobody in your party has the sailing skill, like, depositing them on a boat just by themselves, like, why would you do it? Oh,
I've actually seen groups and have been part of groups that have gone and like, oh yeah, we're totally going to do this. And oh, we got a boat. We're going to do this. And like everyone gets on the boat and like, all right, who can sail? And everyone goes, oh, I thought you could. I thought you could. Well, okay, back to town we go.
Well, that's the thing is, like, when you have, like, the thing that this does is that it allows for the large breadth of skills that you can, you might think is necessary because of, like, while there is some overlap in human experience, like, some of them are just very, very, very specific.
Exactly, yeah.
But it also prevents you from having to, like, spend, like, tons and tons and tons of points into just these few extremely specific skills.
Right, exactly. That's just, someone with someone with profession sailor would obviously be better at sailing a ship than anybody else in the current system. Other people would have to make, like, knowledge something roll, or I guess realistically they're kind of in the same boat, really.
Oh my goodness, we haven't had one of these in 3 weeks.
Right. So yes, let's sail on by. You got that? You got it? No?
I'm seeing starboard.
Let's see if we can navigate our way through this conversation.
I'm kind of rudderless in this conversation.
Or...
Oh. See, now you're just rigging the
Okay.
I think we're finished.
Yeah, no, right. Anyway, so the point being is that, yeah, they're really kind of in the same situation there about the fact that if you have nobody with Profession Sailor, everyone's kind of screwed anyway. But I'd like to say that with the way that they're going to do skills, I'm interested to see how it pans out and whether they're going to allow for a module of just the normal way that they do skills, say in Pathfinder 3.5, or if they're going to have like multiple different skill rules and they can say, here's the binary, here's the 4th edition, here's the 3.5, use what you want. You know, it seems they do want to, no, I'm not going to say pander, I suppose, but they do want to allow for a lot of those different ways of doing things. But
I kind of hope that they stick to their guns on this one, though, where they just say this is an optional system and this is the way that it works because that's the way that, what they don't want to do is they don't want to develop a system that works with every single other system in the whole thing.
Right.
I mean, they've mentioned that in their blog post of like how like there's just some systems are just not going to be compatible with each other. Like that's just kind of how gonna be how it works for them to even design effectively, and I get that.
Yeah, and I think I believe we mentioned it in the last time we talked about this stuff, but like the subclasses and the stuff they've also been doing with that. Just like the way that they're doing character class creation and things like that. It's yet another thing with more of the advanced rule set, so I think we'll get into that at a later date, especially when we see more information.
Speaking of, one of the interesting things I saw that they're ditching the idea of a Paragon path and a prestige class at all, and they're basically migrating the whole system into feats, which is basically like what they should have done in the first place, because that means that you can basically write your own Paragon path, your own prestige class. It's kind of the same. And I suspect that what's going to happen is there's going to be like online resources of people who say, you know, oh, here's this type of character and here is the feats that you would select, basically having written a Paragon path for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And It's kind of honestly that when it comes to the subclasses and stuff, that's something that, again, I think that'll be its own thing we'll have to get into. It's pretty in depth, I guess, but I mean, for now, all I can say is the way they're doing subclasses is very much in the same kind of way they're doing prestige classes, except it's a little bit of a build your own.
Well, yes, and the important part of what they're doing, and one of the biggest reasons why they did it, was because they wanted to take all of the enforced lore out of it.
Yeah.
They wanted you to be able to, like, if you wanted to repurpose a prestige class or a subclass or something like that, then like it doesn't feel like you're kind of going against the original intention, you know?
Right.
It's kind of like how when I remember the prestige class I took on my 4th edition monk, that like it has a whole history. It has like, you know, a monastic tradition and everything.
Yeah, but we just kind of took it and said, oh, we're going to do it this way.
Yeah, we ignored all of that and just said, you know, and just repurposed it. And so considering that that's what we're doing anyway, like why not just allow us to do a DIY kind of character class kit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that just moving on a little bit here, when it comes to the D&D Next stuff that I've been looking at, you know, talking about like yet another thing that they've mentioned, like the adventurers when not adventuring. You know, the like this kind of goes into the interaction and exploration stuff, like what happens to adventurers between adventures. You know, what are they doing? And this is like item creation, talking about like you know, starting a family, doing, you know, building
your castle.
Yeah, buying an inn and running it successfully and doing all these things and giving players a very in-game option of, well, before going to this next castle and killing this dragon and after they've killed the dwarves that were doing this thing over here, they're going to go back to this town and operate like a group of adventurers and do all this stuff, which that kind of stuff doesn't actually work as well for my games because of how, like, close to the, you know, the time that everyone is, you know, if I'm trying to think if I said that right. The idea that like most time in the characters' lives is happening in a little bit more of a real time. I mean, if anything, it's a couple days pass and blah happens, but it's almost always during travel.
What you're saying is that like it's you're doing the literary approach where basically we're telling you the important bits that you care about, and like, you know, yes, he has a whole life outside of that. That's not interesting. You know, we're going to tell the important part of the story.
Kind of, except for like with my stuff, the way I run my campaigns, the whole game is basically the characters' lives at this point. They're not doing anything outside of that game unless they've been written out of the game for a period of time.
Well, what I'm saying though is that you didn't like start the game when the characters were 6 years old.
Exactly, yeah. And the stuff that they're doing with this is, you know, going in the idea that there's going to be actions that they can take outside of adventuring. Like they're saying, like there's going to be an influence or an economic or a knowledge or a dominion thing that they can do.
Now, all of these things are like maybe they're actually important though, because like when you let's throw out a couple of definitions for those terms because they don't really mean anything on their own. So go ahead.
For example, a basic idea, like the tasks in these 4 categories. The first is influence, actions that win you friends and political or social power. For example, a rogue schmoozing around and trying to get a bunch of people in the low income sector to be his friends and to be confidants and things like that. Economic actions that deal with earning and investing cash. So running an inn, starting a shop, doing things like that.
Or even just like spending money to create an item.
Yeah, knowledge. Actions that allow you to train abilities or uncover secrets. So doing research on like what's going on. This is in the same way as like going around and asking questions, trying to find adventure hooks, or like just doing or training in a class. And then finally the dominion, actions for managing your personal followers and holdings. So building a castle, running an army, doing things like that. And these are things that like happen, I guess, in like a week increment. And they talk about like, you choose a special task that's boiled down into one of those 4 categories. And there are going to be feats and abilities and things that these classes are going to be better at or good at that can modify how these happen.
Now, what I can see being neat about this is the ability to play characters that are not actively part of the roster. Because just because you say this is adventurers when they're not adventuring, doesn't mean the whole adventure grinds to a halt. You can have like a good portion of the characters continue, but just leave somebody behind. Yeah. And then that person is doing something, and there's like a whole rule system dictating what he's doing.
Exactly, and the one I think really important thing to say about this is because there's these pillars, but one thing that they're really trying to do is they're trying to tie them all together very closely. Because as we've mentioned many times on the podcast, that like in most D&D games and most systems for role playing, it's there's the combat system and then there's everything else. And that is everything else is just kind of lumped in there with do what you want. It's not really governed or not really dealt with in the rules because it's just kind of ridiculous. Well, in this, they're saying, we want your character that like some of their combat abilities might actually play into how they explore or how they interact with people on a like a personal level or this, that, and the other thing.
I don't know if I got that sense. Like combat abilities for exploration.
Well, not specifically combat, but they're talking about the idea that they're trying to make it so that things like mesh together. They want to make the exploration and the interconnection and all that kind of stuff. They want to make that feel like one system that works seamlessly with itself rather than 3 separate systems that just happen to be there.
Even though the whole thing is modular and technically they are all separate systems.
Yes, but it's something where they've actually said in these articles that, these are the core principles behind D&D. You're going to have combat, you're going to explore something, whether it be a dungeon or a city or something, and you're going to deal with NPCs. Unless you're playing, because they really feel that these are the core principles behind D&D. Almost every game you will play will involve those 3 things, to lesser and greater extent, but those 3 things. And they want those 3 things as part of the core game to be included and mesh well. So they're trying to make it so these things all work together without having to, and that's without all the modular stuff. That's without like the added rules for weather or added rules for environmental hazards or because that's just modules that are part of the exploration pillar, if you see what I'm saying.
Yes, we'll have to see which parts are actually base and which ones are modular, because again, the basic stuff is going to be really, really short.
Yeah, and we'll see how it goes, because I mean you can fit a lot on 16 pages, especially if you're not dealing with a bunch of extra character classes or et ceteras.
That is kind of the funny thing. I was so confused when I took a look at some of the materials a number of months ago, and I found like the fighter and the wizard and the cleric and the rogue, and I guess that's all there is.
Yeah, everything else is basically just a breakdown of those classes,
something like that, which kind of makes sense on some level.
Well, yeah, you have skill-based fighter, i.e. the rogue. You have you have a fighter-based fighter, I guess. Just strength
heavy armor
fighter, and then you have arcane caster, divine caster. Everything else is just a subclass of those.
Something like that, yeah. Let's see. Before we wrap up, just a couple of observations that I made. like, this is kind of largely fluffy and not really super important, but it kind of struck me in a way. Paladins are going to have basically 3 subcategories of Cavalier, Blackguard, and Warden, depending on their on their alignment. Which
actually, there's something about that in one of the most recent things. Alignment is still in the game, but they actually have said that they wanted to completely remove what the like how alignment affected gameplay. Like, they didn't want alignment to be something that was interacted with as much as it is now.
Oh yeah, so something like, we need to find out the murder mystery, so the paladin gets out Detect Evil and solves it immediately.
Exactly, things like that. So they're talking about how they wanted to take that out. Like, they're not going to have as much protection from good, protection from evil, da-da-da-da-da. They're going to be breaking it down into, like, creature type and like keywords and stuff like that a little bit more.
Yeah, so other than that, I thought that this quote was interesting, which kind of, I think, is a little misguided and indicates a little bit of a lack of understanding of perhaps, like, how to design, well, not how to design, but it indicates perhaps a lack of an understanding of the way that the system will inevitably be. The quote goes like this: "We don't want to make any assumptions about increased ability scores with leveling. There are 2 reasons for this. First, that would turn the ability increases into another tax. Second, we're mindful that not everyone who wants to make an attack will max out strength or dexterity. A melee character should feel uncomfortable about boosting charisma or constitution for story reasons or personal preference." This is the important part of the quote. A choice isn't a choice if there's only one assumed correct answer. The problem is that D&D has always been that. D&D is largely a system of, here is this thing, here's how to counter it, here's the answer to the choice. Like, it's it's formulaic in that way, where, like, there's depending on what you want to do, there is an answer. You know, when they say that choices should be ambiguous, like, it's I don't
think they're saying choices should be ambiguous. I think they're trying to say we want to give people as many ways of solving the problems as possible without saying that everyone will always assume that there is just one answer, and if they can't do that answer, then they're not going to attempt it at all. I mean, I've seen players that have said, if I can't kill it, I'm not going to deal with it, and I'm just going to throw my paper in the air and walk out of the room. Or whatever. It's the idea of, there is an answer to this. I know what the answer is, and this is, if it's not working, then the DM is just playing hard to get, and I'm walking out.
Well, when it talks about, like, spending points to boost charisma or constitution in a melee character, I mean, like, that's personal preference, that's story, but, like, I mean, how much does that really help you? And I don't know how much that the system can accommodate for you to improve those ability scores and then still be effective at what you hope to do.
I think they're basing that more on class, like the idea that a higher level fighter, if they completely separate, like, your dex and your strength from the attack roll, or if they not completely separate, but they definitely make it a lot less of an impact, where it's like, oh, every 2 points I put into this ability, my modifier goes up. So obviously strength will only be it will be the only stat that I ever increase on my barbarian. Because why would I increase anything else when this is what is required for me to do my job? Breaking that away a little bit and saying, well, if we take away the necessity of having a high strength and saying, you know what, you're barbarian, you're still good at doing barbarian things, and you maybe have class abilities that make up for, that not necessarily make up, but just that take the place of having to have a high ability score there.
I mean, maybe you take a series of feats that allow you to multi-class to Starbarian.
Yeah, exactly. But the idea being is that if they because we're operating off the principles that everything is based off of, like, modifiers off stat, like how we do it now. But we'll have to see how they do it, because if they want to make it so that you can have a barbarian that has a decently high charisma because they felt comfortable enough to put points in there, I'd say the only way I can think that would happen is if they removed the necessity of having to put those points into strength or con or whatever, because that's what's happening now. And the only way I can see of removing that necessity is by taking away that modifier growth like they have now.
We'll see. I mean, I think they still are married to a lot of old D&D concepts in a lot of ways, but I mean,
right now, you keep in mind, it's for every 2 points I put in strength, I have a 5% extra chance to hit and 1 point of extra damage. I mean, or however many, depending on whatever they're doing. But the idea is that mathematically, there's no reason for them not to do that. But if they take away that necessity, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see. Maybe it's just poor wording on my part. I just think that thinking of their system as basically an engine of problems and solutions to said problems, I think is probably a healthier outlook. Anyway, that's all the time we have for D&D Next, and that's all the time we have for this show. So we are going to go back to the Saving the World for another week. Between now and then, contact us with questions, comments, opinions, shout-outs, give show topics, link news articles, or sound off on this week's Inquisition, which, in case you forgot, is...
What's the best or worst advice you've given to someone?
Send responses to the email at gamingdisquisition@gmail.com.
You can reach us on Facebook, facebook.com/The Gaming Disquisition, or on the Google+.
Get a hold of us on Twitter at Disquisitor Sam.
At Disquisitor Mark.
On Twitter. Thanks and shout-outs this week. First off, thanks to all of our buddies for helping us out with the big move-out, move-in, move-over kind of effort.
It's been great. We've really appreciated all of your assistance. I mean, those of you who offered assistance but couldn't make it due to work, we do appreciate the offers as well. So, thanks very much to everyone who's been involved.
All right, then. Other thanks and shout-outs?
Yeah, shout out to the random guy wandering around drunk in our new apartment complex, hitting things with a knife.
Hitting things with a knife?
Yeah, I mean, we've been there for about a week or so, and we were sitting out on our, because we're on the second floor, we're standing on our deck, and we're looking out, and this guy kind of starts wobbling by. He's kind of across the little street from us, and he's got a big old knife in his hands, and he
are we talking like machete or?
Not quite a machete, but a big old Bowie knife.
Okay.
And he goes up and he hits a tree a few times. We're like, okay, that's kind of weird. And he starts walking away. He goes over into a different complex because we're right on the edge. And he walks over and out of nowhere, he just stabs a truck.
Wow.
And hits it a couple times, and then he wanders off, and we see him as he's going by, he hits another truck, and we're like, okay, calling the police.
Shout out to you indeed. Let's see. Thanks to Sam and Joy, not Sam, but Sam and Joy for sending us your links this week.
Don't thank yourself.
Thanks to XPRTNovice for his track, that thing that I can't say, so this.
La Montaña de los Caballos.
Thank you. And...
Of course, thanks to Andrew and Jillian Aversa, Jeff Ball, and XPRTNovice for your track, A Fistful of Nickels.
And as always, thanks to all of our musical artist friends for letting us use your work on the show. Your work helps make our show what it is. We will be back 7 days from today to do this crazy thing all over again. Until then, game on, internets.
We still got it.